Hello, Laziali all over the world. Alistair McKenzie needs a beer because it has been a terrible performance from Lazio last night, and it's tough to recover. It's tough to handle this without a beer, right, Alistair?
Yeah, I think. I mean, it's been almost 24 hours has passed now, but I'm still at the point where I feel like alcohol is the only answer to get through this. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's going to be tough in half an hour today to try and get through all the talking points from that match because there's quite a lot of them and quite a lot of problems to discuss, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Before starting talking about Lazio, guys, as usual, remember we are on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and if you like the show, please, our Patreon page, patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Subscription start at just $2 a month. Alistair, we have plenty of things to talk about. I would start from the beginning. It's since the football restart, since the Serie A restart, I think only against Atalanta, Lazio had a good start. In all the other matches, Lazio allowed a goal at the beginning of the match. Against Lecce, we've been lucky because Lecce scored immediately, and then thanks to VAR, they see a clear handball, and so it has been cancelled. But why is it? What's going on?
I don't know. There's no easy answer to that question, and the thing is, as well, it's really unusual for this Lazio team. I think before this started happening, when we came back from the break, Lazio were the team in Serie A who conceded the fewest goals in the opening 15 minutes of a game, and now all of a sudden it seems like they're coming into games very slowly, like you say. Obviously, this time it's a bit different because then Caicedo goes and scores the goal immediately after the disallowed one, which should be mentioned. In large part thanks to an error from Lecce, though, rather than any particularly inventive play from Lazio. But yeah, it's a big problem, and you'd expect them, particularly in a game like this, I would say, to have a slightly different approach, a slightly different attitude from the start, because like we were saying last time we were talking, when we were talking previewing this game, we were saying it would be perfect for Lazio to be able to kind of wrap this up in the first half so that they can rest players, so that they can maybe try a few new things. And given Lecce's record going into this game, there wasn't really, that didn't seem like a completely ridiculous proposal that Lazio might be able to do that. So yeah, I think it's one thing that it's a concerning thing Lazio keep doing, but it's another thing when it's happening against a team who just wouldn't even be able to buy a win before last night.
Yes, and the fact is, I honestly thought, after scoring like that, after what happened 2 minutes before, I thought, this could really go Lazio's way. Instead, Lazio didn't play, Alistair. Lazio didn't play, and we can say that Johnny had played terrible football, but I think overall, all the team had a terrible performance. And again, people can blame Lazio's bench is not good enough, but you don't need Real Madrid's bench to beat Lecce, right? Lecce is playing every 3 days like Lazio, has a weak side, and Lazio should be able to destroy Lecce. Let's not forget that Atalanta, walk past through Lecce. Sassuolo destroyed Lecce 3 days ago, and Lazio struggled to score more than one goal. This is concerning.
Yeah, and there's concerns all over the place, but I think for me, defensively, it was the one thing that really stood out because, first of all, the defence has been the area of this team that's been the least affected by all these problems, all these changes, all these injuries. Obviously, we've lost Luis Felipe to begin with, and he came back finally, but that has been really settled back three of Patric, Acerbi and Radu, and Thomas Strakosha behind them. And before this break, let's not forget Lazio had the best defensive record in the league. Now, I looked it up earlier, and Lazio have conceded 10 goals in 5 games now since we came back. Before then, it took them 14 games before that to actually manage to concede that many goals. So there's been a huge decline in terms of this team's ability to defend, giving away soft goals. I mean, last night they were just disgraceful, really. the second one in particular. But yeah, I mean, that for me is a big, big issue because the attack hasn't been firing, the midfield hasn't been operating properly. But previously, we've been able to say, looking at the Milan and Atalanta games, in the case of the Atalanta game, okay, it's our first game back, getting back into things. It's understandable they started slowly, maybe. The Milan game, so many injury problems, particularly suspensions up front. But this time, there's no excuse. There's no excuse for defending this poorly or just the general team performance being this bad. But for me, I just think the defence is a real problem.
Stefan Scarpulla asked us on Twitter, do I have to watch the rest of the season? Is it bad for my health?
It's never good for your health, is it? I mean, that's not why we're doing it. It's probably taking years off our expected lifespans.
Yeah, honestly, Stefan, if you have something better to do it, because you see, Alistair's trying to get drunk during the podcast to forget everything. It's also not. But yeah, the thing is, Alistair, as I wrote you before, Lazio is still second. We have, at the moment, 20 points, but Roma-Napoli has to play. I'm not sure this team can reach the Champions League if they continue to play like that. I saw big problem. Acerbi was knackered after 10 minutes. Johnny was destroyed and the match just started. I think Lukaku coming out of McDonald's was more fit than all the rest of the team. And this is really scaring me because the season is not over. 7 matches are missing. And the fixture of Lazio is not that easy, especially if you think that Lazio lost against Lecce. I mean, how many teams are worse than Lecce now? Don't think that much.
Now, I think this is an overreaction on your part, Vittorio. I mean, yes, I wouldn't be surprised if we dropped down to 4th at all, playing like this, and also the way that Atalanta are going. I can see them finishing 2nd at this rate. But honestly, to not finish in the Champions League places, you have to remember not only involves Lazio continuing to play this badly and basically not managing to win another 2 games, but also the teams below us win all of their games for the rest of the season, which I can't see happening. I think that's less likely than the Lazio thing, maybe. But yeah, no, it is concerning. And obviously, it's not what we want as well, because this season deserves to have a better finish than this. And it may be a blip last night, but I think that there's enough evidence from what we've seen since the restart that this is actually, the result of the way things have been going rather than an anomaly in the pattern of play. And it's something that needs addressed sooner rather than later. I mean, the question is what? How do you address this? What is going to be the issue that allows Inzaghi to resolve this problem?
Well, as I wrote you this morning, I think Lazio should be firing the fitness coach. And if it didn't happen last night, it should be happening today. I mean, people said, well, Atalanta is running faster, blah, blah, blah. Milan was running more than Lazio. Fiorentina was running more than Lazio. Torino was running more than Lazio. Liverani, a couple of weeks ago, said, I don't know what my players did because they didn't train at all. They are not fit. And they yesterday run much more than Lazio. So what did Lazio player do in this 100 and past days without football? They didn't train. And the other thing, Alistair, is, okay, if they didn't train, how is it possible that we had so many muscle injury? What was the fitness coach doing, We had Luis Felipe injured without playing. Barusic, muscle injured without playing. Raul Moro, Adekanye, Caicedo. I mean, we have like 7 players injured and the other are not able to run. So, I mean, this is a huge responsibility from the fitness coach that did a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the biggest issue so far has been in the number of individual errors being committed across the team. And it's not necessarily, everyone's pointing to the fact that key players are underperforming. But I think it actually goes beyond the fact that they're not playing as well as they could. It's that they're actually making quite damaging errors, whether that's Ciro missing chances he should be putting in, whether it's Alberto delaying passes so that players are offside, whether it's Acerbi, whatever the hell he was doing last night at the corner. I mean, Strakosha, don't get me started on how he's been playing since we came back. I mean, there's been a lot of individual errors in this team. And what I wonder is how linked that is to conditioning, because I think you make mistakes, you make more. You're more likely to make mistakes if your mental state is wrong, if you're mentally in the wrong place. This has been an issue with this team before that we've talked about, is the mentality and their mental strength and so on. But I wonder now if it's also to do with just fatigue and tiredness, because it becomes harder to make the right decisions in the moments where you're tiredest. And I think it was actually quite noticeable last night, because I think, to be honest, once Lazio took the lead, they settled into the game okay. They created a couple more decent chances through Immobile. They weren't really being threatened too much by Lecce. Up until that first cooling break, Lazio were doing fine. But it's as soon as they're into the final hour of the game that they just kind of seem to run out of ideas and run out of energy and start making these mistakes.
Again, I blame the fitness coach. And the thing is, Caicedo Immobile didn't play Saturday. So you cannot say, well, Immobile was tired because he played every 3 days. No, they didn't. And still, Caicedo disappeared in the second half. Immobile wasted an incredible chance. And he didn't play well at all. Laziale asking, what I want to know is who did Acerbi swap the shirt at the first half this game, because that was the best. So, yeah, Laziale, I thought Acerbi had a terrible match, but it's not the first time since Serie A restarted. I thought Acerbi is playing really badly, and you can see at time that he cannot breathe anymore. He looks like, he's destroyed. So his physical condition is awful, and he's not the only one. So, yeah. Right, Alistair?
Yeah, I mean, we need to talk about Patric, because what the hell was that? But, I mean, I think that Patric's taking too much blame himself for what happened last night, when the reality is, for those 2 goals, Acerbi was responsible for them, basically.
Yeah.
First one made a really tame, poor tackle, and then followed the defender out. There was nobody left in the middle. That's not Patric's fault. He's not the player who's supposed to be challenging a player like Babacar in the air to get across. I mean, how the hell is he ever going to win that challenge? So Acerbi was at fault there. That wasn't just Patric's mistake. And then the second goal was, as basic as it gets for a centre-back. That was a really, really bad error. And the most worrying thing about it was how uncharacteristic it is for Acerbi. He doesn't previously ever make mistakes like these. So for me, it has to be to do with, like you say, the preparation, the tiredness. I mean, there doesn't seem to be any other excuse for this to me. But Patric, I mean, I know he's apologised. He has had his apology accepted by Donati. But why would you bite someone's arm during a game? I don't understand this phenomenon that has happened since Luis Suarez made it popular. It completely goes over my head. And now he's being suspended for 4 matches.
Yep.
I know there's a lot of people out there saying, oh, maybe Lazio are better off without Patric for 4 matches. Of course they're not. We need every player we can get right now. We've got no one left. As much as I love Bastos, can we trust him more than Patric in there? I mean, it's incredible. And it really summarised everything that went wrong last night. That you have a player biting someone to get a red card. It's just unbelievable.
Yep. Yeah. I can understand that you're very tired and you're not thinking too much, but that's simply unexcusable. And 4 matches, I think it's fair. I mean, we cannot complain about that. It has been terrible. When I saw it the first time, I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe, honestly, that the ref didn't see it. So, but yeah, I think it was... the perfect end of a terrible match from Lazio. I mean, and the funny thing, Alistair, was that Rafael, the Lecce goalkeeper, made 2 embarrassing mistakes. On one, we scored. On the other one, Ciro Immobile decided to shoot immediately instead of running in the goal, and then made two unbelievable saves. I thought, I saw the cross coming, and Adekanye was free, and I would say, "Oh my, Bobby!" And then he hit it, and Rafael made an unbelievable save, and the same thing against Milinkovic Savic afterwards. That's the typical Lazio match where you play terrible, and then you get two incredible chances, and the goalkeeper it's turned to be Buffon.
Just going back to Patric, I mean, I've seen we've had a few reactions on this on Twitter from people. I mean, Fabi said, should Lazio ban Patric from the team? Omid Shakabai said a lot of Lazio fans have turned their back on Patric, saying he should never play for Lazio again. Should we not stand by our player who made a mistake in the heat of the moment? So, I mean, I think the kind of, the gut reaction, the instinctive reaction or reflex people have had to this has been very strong, saying get Patric out, or he's a disgrace, he doesn't deserve to play for Lazio. I mean, I think we should put a bit of perspective on this. I mean, it's a terrible, it's a damaging mistake to make, because now we're going to lose him when we really can't afford to. But let's not forget the progress that Patric has made as a defender over the last couple of years. And I think it's a bit ridiculous to start suggesting that Lazio should kick him out of the squad because of this.
No, it doesn't make sense. And, let's not forget that Totti in a Coppa Italia final chased Balotelli and kicked him from behind. What should have Roma done there? Yeah, I mean, that's much worse than what Patric did. So, and people justify Totti. So... And then now everybody, because it's Totti, and now everybody is against Patric. Someone suggested he should be an actor of Dracula. So I think, obviously, he made a terrible mistake. Let's not find excuse, and nobody's justifying him. But, he get 4 matches of suspension. I think that's perfect. And, yeah, people make mistakes. So let's carry on. Now, the biggest problem is recovering time for Sassuolo, because, Alistair, one of the questions a lot of our listeners ask is, okay, the team is tired, a lot of key players are playing badly, we have injury, we have suspension, okay, how do we recover from that? And my solution is we have to start to rotate much more the players, because yesterday against Lecce, at a certain point, Milinkovic Savic came in, Cataldi came in, and then you go to the press conference and Inzaghi said, well, Leva was injured, he shouldn't have played. Cataldi was injured, he shouldn't have played. Milinkovic Savic was injured, he shouldn't. Okay, but you have Falbo, you have other players on the bench. It's better to play these guys than injured players. And now there are rumors that Leva won't be fit for Saturday because he played against Lecce. Now, let's start doing a full turnover instead of putting in the same players, because it won't get better, If you play injured, it won't fix your problem. It will always get it worse. So, Javan Anderson was playing great. Why didn't he play? Why didn't he start? Right?
I mean, I think Inzaghi up until this point has hoped that at some point, if he keeps sticking with a winning formula and what was working for this entire season up until now, then it will at a certain point turn and they'll click back into gear again. But there have been so many kind of bumps in the roads that this team hasn't really had that much time on the pitch together as a first choice starting 11, for example. And it's time to recognise, like you say, that that's not something we're going to be able to get between now and the end of the season. So there have to be other solutions. I think for a start that they need to start kind of attacking a bit differently. That was something I really noticed over the last few games. So reliant on getting the ball into wide positions and crossing it into the box, but there's nobody in the box who can get on the end of crosses. I mean, Ciro does his best there, Caicedo does his best there, but it was even happening when they weren't on the pitch. And when Milinkovic Savic came on yesterday, it made a big difference because he was about the only player we'd had all game who could actually do anything with these crosses. And against Fiorentina, Torino and Milan, there was something like 30 crosses coming into the box during a game from Lazio. We're not doing anything with them. And the other thing that's been frustrating me as well is that something you really need to try to make the most of in these conditions where you're tired, you don't have all your players available, you're playing all these games, is set pieces. And I've talked about this before, but why do we not get anything out of free kicks and corners? We're conceding off them, fine, easy, no problem. But we're just not doing anything with them. And again, last night, it seemed like, I can't remember what the total of corners was, but it's something like 15 by the end of the game, I think. And I don't know, there's just nothing happening with them. And I just think that if you're having all these opportunities from crosses and high balls into the box during games, then we need to start working on strategies for that to work, or to get our dangerous players in the right positions for that to work, because it's just not been doing anything yet.
You get nervous, get another beer. Come on. Well, Alistair, one thing is, and we said it often in this podcast, Lazio is really, really Luis Alberto dependent. Luis Alberto takes free kicks. Luis Alberto is the assist man. When Luis Alberto is playing badly, like he played against Atalanta and against Lecce, these teams is not that dangerous anymore. Luis Alberto took all the corners, I think, except the last, and we didn't create a single chance. He had a free kick and sent it wide over the bar. So, again, my question is, we all love Luis Alberto. We all think he's a great player. He's not fit. Give Andre Anderson a chance. You have a player. Can it get worse than this? Come on, no. I mean, we lost against Lecce with Luis Alberto. Let's try Andre Anderson. What happened worse? We lose against Sassuolo. Well, guys, we lost against Lecce. There's nothing worse. So, Inzaghi, come on. Bobby Adekanye had the biggest chance of the match in the second half, and he hardly had the chance before. So let's try give all the other players a chance, like happened with Javan Anderson, because we see a difference. So Luis Alberto will always be the assist man, the best. He's not fit now. Let's rest him against Sassuolo, give Andre Anderson a chance. If things go bad, put him in the second half. But let's try and do something different. Because, it's not magic. It's like, I wear the same shirt every time Lazio plays. But it doesn't work all the time, If you start losing, then you have to change things. And I think Inzaghi is too persistent. He sticks on those players. And even if they don't start, they put them in anyway, even if Luis Alberto, Milinkovic-Savic are not fit. No, go with Andre Anderson. Go with someone else.
Yeah, I mean, but you touched on it there. I think that's the reason that Lazio might struggle here, is that natural reserve of Inzaghi's, his inability to really make particularly bold decisions. He's not somebody who's going to really, he's not going to change things that much very often. Even in, Coppa Italia, Europa League group games, it took a lot for him to really give guys a chance who the fans would quite like to see on the pitch. And I think he's going to be a bit resistant to doing it now, because it's just not in his nature. It's not something he naturally looks to do, is throw in wild cards here and there and try new things. But like you say, the reality is we kind of have to see what these guys can do, because there's not going to be anyone else left. And also, like you say, that's what's going to allow the better players to be at their best, is if they have the energy to be able to. So yeah, I mean, at the moment, I'm just terrified thinking about Sassuolo's forward line running at Lazio on the counter-attack on Saturday. And by the way, the Saturday game is 5:15 kickoff. It's so hot right now. I mean, 5:15 is not going to make a difference as to the heat of the day. And given how sluggish Lazio have been so far, I think that's going to make things even worse and even harder for them. But honestly, with Jeremy Boga running at Bastos or something, I dread to think what's going to happen. So, I mean, at least they can't defend either, so it might be quite an entertaining game, but we'll see.
Well, you're Scottish. You cannot talk about heat, so
I can talk about how bad it feels. I'm quite an expert on that.
But yeah, it's gonna be walking football, which could be an advantage for Lazio. And Alistair, yesterday it was so sad to see Leva not able to chase Lecce players. They weren't Real Madrid, they were Lecce players, and Leva wasn't able to chase them running back. Masay is asking, how do you rate Lazzari? Am I right thinking about him as the biggest disappointment of the season?
Wow, no, I think that's really harsh, to be honest. Yeah, no, I think he's been brilliant. He's had a great season. I think now perhaps people are getting a bit frustrated at points with him. And like I was saying, that going back to the crossing thing and the cross is not always finding their target. I don't think that's necessarily always down to the delivery as to the actual movement or options that are in the box. But Lazzari, let's not forget, has been asked of him than any other player in this squad since the restart, because he has been used in every single game from the start, and he runs more than any other player on the team. So it's more understandable to see a drop off from a guy like Lazzari than from pretty much any other player on the pitch. And despite that, I think he's actually been performing pretty consistently. I think we'd like to see more from him, but at the same time, I wouldn't pick him out for criticism in this squad right now.
Can I say something? I think he's the only Lazio player that was running yesterday, and it wasn't the first time since the season restarted. He's the only player who seems fit. All the other in the second half tend to disappear. He's the only one running. So, and as I said at the beginning, he was putting balls in the box, but if Immobile is late, Caicedo wasn't there, there's nobody there, it's difficult. Karsten Krog is saying, unfortunately, almost all our players have been playing terrible. Do you think it's too much pressure, perhaps? Because this post-coronavirus team would be a relegation contender. Well, he's not wrong. We lost like 3 matches since the season restarted, which it's terrible. Do you think Lazio had too much pressure, and that's why we're performing that bad? Ciro Immobile yesterday said after the match, I'm not as calm as before. I need to relax a little bit.
I think having this, we talked about momentum before the restart, and I think that we've noticed that impact of losing that, because we've lost more games and we've lost more times in the last 5 matches than we had in the entire season before then, which is crazy. And it goes to show that there has been a huge difference between the Lazio pre-break and the Lazio post-break. And yeah, I think that pressure is perhaps part of it. I don't think that's the explanation. I don't think there is one explanation for all this, but I think that perhaps the fact that they've had this basically 2 months of sitting around reading the papers, talking about the Scudetto battle and talking about them being 1 point behind Juventus and talking about the chance to have the first Scudetto in 20 years. And I guess they will have this confidence and this knowledge of how good they are or how good they can be, and maybe because they've started poorly, it's not that confidence a bit, and now they're going to have to basically build themselves back up again. Because let's not forget, the 2 games we've won, we've still had to come from behind to win. We're yet to see a dominant Lazio performance. Someone else, let me just find the exact quote from Julius. Yeah, Julius C said, he's curious about how the absence of the fans has affected the team after the restart. The players seem to have lost the spirit, passion, and grit. Do you think that's another part of this, is just the empty stadiums?
I think this is part of the reason why Lazio start matches not very focused, because they are sort of distracted by empty stadiums, while usually they are, at the beginning, the fans are chanting, they are focused on the beginning of the match. I think that's one of the reasons, definitely. And obviously, I think when the match gets hard, when you are 1 goal down, the fans help you to find more energy to recover. So that's definitely something that is missing. I really have to think that the biggest problem is the physical condition. Too many injuries, too many players that are not fit. And the thing is, why only Lazio is not running? I think apart from Roma, all the other teams are running much more than Lazio. Fabi's asking, does Immobile deserve to be in the starting 11 at this moment? I think he still does, even though he's not playing great football, because it doesn't look like the other much better than Ciro Immobile. That's not one player playing badly. It's all the players playing terrible. So I think Ciro Immobile should be starting against Sassuolo. Sean McIntosh is asking, okay, we know the problems. What are the solution? What's your plan, Alistair? What's the solution for this problem?
Oh, I'm so glad I can tell you the solution. Well, no, I mean, I guess we've already kind of gone through a few ideas there in terms of bringing in more of the rotated players and giving them more opportunities, and therefore more rest to the other players might help us actually rediscover a bit of that. And also perhaps changing the way that the team's attacking at the moment. The defense really needs to just be more switched on. It's just a concentration issue, I think. I mean, time and time again in the past, when questions have been asked about this Lazio team, Simone Inzaghi has talked about how it's not to do with the formation or the system, it's to do with the application and the way that the players actually understand it and use it. That becomes a bit harder, I think, when you're not having the same 11 every week, when people are shuffling in and out of the team all the time, and it becomes even harder when half of those players who, like we're saying, the rotated players are kind of not used to it at all because they've not really played with the first. So there isn't any obvious answer to this, but the one thing we do know is that there's a hell of a lot of quality in this team. I mean, it's a really, really good team. So they are capable of beating Lecce. They had the chances last night, let's not forget, to beat Lecce. They could easily have won that game if they'd actually put them away. But they're not finding the kind of small margins, I think, that they need at the moment. So honestly, I think a huge part of this for me is just that momentum and that confidence. And there's such a confidence-based team, this, that I think if they can actually manage to get 2 wins in a row, even Sassuolo Udinese, that would be huge in terms of the way that the entire team plays. I really believe that. But the problem is how you go and find those 2 wins in a row is a question I don't have an answer to.
But we beat Torino, Fiorentina, so we made those 2 wins in a row. And let's not forget that yesterday Lecce missed a penalty. So, yes, we had the chances, but Lecce as well had the chances. And Strakosha made an incredible save at the end. Alistair, honestly, I think Inzaghi should risk everything against Sassuolo and made a massive turnover. Acerbi out, Luis Alberto out, give Vavro, Andre Anderson, Javan Anderson a chance. You have 5 subs, so they can start. And in the second half, if things are going badly, then you can put all the other players in. But we saw Sassuolo changing 7 players against Inter, and what happened? They drew against Inter. So I mean, we have to do it because Acerbi is simply rubbish. He's not able to play all those matches altogether. So I think this is the only solution. This doesn't mean that we'll beat Sassuolo, but maybe on Wednesday against Udinese, they're more fit and the starters can play and win a match.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth pointing out, people haven't noticed, that Sassuolo are one of the teams who have started the best since the restart. I think they're in the top 4 in terms of the league the mini league table from when we came back again. They're scoring a hell of a lot of goals. Yeah, I think that it's going to be a very difficult game. I don't know. I mean, I can't really imagine, to be honest, that Inzaghi will do what you've said, because he never does. But
Never.
Yeah, we're going to have to find that extra something. We're going to have to find that spark from somewhere. We're going to have to find that organization from somewhere. We're going to have to find the right mentality and confidence and approach to games again. And yeah, it's looking a bit dodgy at the moment, which is extra frustrating after Juventus lost last night, because they are basically giving anyone else, they're basically out there in the town square asking, does anyone want a Scudetto race? Because come over here and you can get one, and nobody is coming out of their houses.
Yeah, pretty much the worst Juventus of the last 10 years is winning the Scudetto because simply Lazio Inter are not willing to go for it. And this is, hard to take. But, I think now our goal is to try to get points against Sassuolo and get them the qualification for the Champions League, because it's going to be massive. Alistair, before we wrap it up, why they didn't give... What do you think about the penalty of Lazio, the one that wasn't given for the handball of Lecce defender? Do you think it was...
It was one of these... You mean the one on Patric? Or the one with the Lecce one?
The Lecce one.
I just tie myself in knots with this handball rule, honestly, because I think the Patric one, when I first saw it, I said, okay, that's not a penalty because it comes off the body onto the arm, and his body's not in an unnatural position, but then his arms are then raised above his head, so then that goes to a different rule. So it's all about interpretation. Whereas the one where I can't remember who it was, maybe Donati, who turns and it strikes his arm, I don't really understand why one is a penalty and the other one isn't. That's my issue with this. I really can't try and explain handball penalties right now because it seems like it's entirely down to personal interpretations of what are quite a confusing set of rules.
So it looks like they didn't give a penalty for Lazio because in 2020 there wasn't a camera showing that the ball hit the hand. The camera images wasn't clear enough. I mean, this is embarrassing. Just because the Stadio Olimpico is better and they was able to see Radu's handball, and Stadio del Mare of Lecce is terrible, there weren't enough camera, so the ref didn't have a better view. This is simply unacceptable, I think. So this is the unofficial statement from the ref. So it's simply embarrassing.
Yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, we'll be in a position where we don't have to talk about penalty decisions because we can actually win games comfortably. You know,
Yep.
that's really what we're aiming for here. But yeah, I mean, there's been an awful lot of penalty chat already. I think we've conceded a penalty. How many games of the last 5? Quite a few by now. Yet the one thing that everyone talks about without fail is the one that we've managed to be given. So there you go. Tells you a lot.
Well, Alistair, we can wrap it up here. There's another big important match Saturday against Sassuolo. It's going to be quite warm, so be careful. And we're going to talk after that match, hoping that finally Lazio improve and get some points to move the table. Thank you again, Alistair. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And again, we're going to talk next Saturday after Lazio Sassuolo. And please rate and review the podcast. Bye, Alistair.
Cheers.